I first became interested in regulation in the 1960s and 1970s when I was practicing law and when I was an academic. First, in those days, this is a long time ago, most regulation consisted of controlling big national industries such as the airline industry, the old telephone industry, Ma Bell, AT&T, railroads, trucking. When we looked at the operation of these programs, we found that prices were actually higher when you were regulated than when you weren't. There was a famous case when I was a young man. Somebody looked at airfares in California, which were not regulated at all. It was a pretty competitive market, and the prices were much lower than for comparable routes or distances, say between Boston and Washington on the East Coast, which were regulated. When I was practicing law, for a time I was working for one of the major railroads. We would sit down around a table with all of the different railroads in the country, and we would decide what prices we wanted to charge, and then we would submit those to the Interstate Commerce Commission in Washington. The government was actually organizing all of the competitors to set their prices together, so there was actually a good reason why prices were too high, because you didn't have that hard price competition. Later, regulation began to change. The work that many other people did, but also many important politicians. For example, the late Senator Kennedy from Massachusetts, Edward Kennedy, was a great proponent of deregulating the airlines. And he was aided by a young man on his staff who'd been an academic colleague of mine named Stephen Breyer. And Senator Kennedy and others were pointing out that regulation seemed to be having perverse effects. And it helped them that all of the airlines, business people are always complaining about over-regulation, too much regulation. So it actually became a popular cause. And in the late 1970s and in the 1980s, during the Reagan administration, by which time I was working in the government, we eliminated a lot of these old utility controls over telephones, trucking, railroads, and airlines. And these reforms had, in general, extremely positive effects.